Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. July 28th, 2025. The moon is in the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is retrograde. So one thing we want to keep in mind this whole week, but especially emphasized when the moon is in a sign like Virgo or Gemini, is that communications, how we get points across, appointments, all these things can be, well, it's as though what we're being told is that it's really important to listen to, communicate through methods that are not direct and quick. There is so much messaging information that goes on now that is soundbites, just ways of text shorthand, memes, GIFs, all kinds of ways that people are, or maybe it's GIFs, all kinds of ways that people are, quote, communicating ideas, but not necessarily going in any depth to the essence of what they want to get across. So even basic stuff like, okay, let's make an appointment to meet for lunch on the corner of 22nd and 4th. And it's really important to make sure you understand what exactly that means. Is it 22nd Street, Avenue, 4th Avenue, 4th Street? Because people will make assumptions in their head that isn't necessarily the same as the other person is receiving. So we want to look when Mercury's retrograde on how we're conveying an idea and how it's received. In general, that's good to do all the time. But when Mercury's retrograde, it's though we're getting pulled back and asked to pay attention to how messaging is delivered and how it is received. And this includes all kinds of messaging, like intuitive messaging, that sense of, is this really what I want to do? Or is this a safe area or venture to go into? And many times people act in what they think is their logical mind. I'm going to proceed with this, in spite of all kinds of warning signals that are telling them no. I mean, I certainly can look back on points in my life where I am acutely aware I was being directed in a certain way, but I was absolutely adamant that I was going to do things the way my logical, or sometimes what happens with what we think is our logical brain is that we're really letting preconceived notions, fear, sense of limitations of what is the right way to do things, and we're totally missing how there might be a new path, something more organic, something that perhaps is more of a risk, or a path we hadn't even noticed because we were so convicted that what we were doing or what we had to make happen was the only way. And I think one of the gifts about Mercury retrograde is looking at, okay, my flight has been delayed. They have canceled. the 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 bus that I thought I was going to take somewhere. My appointment with so and so just got rescheduled. And instead of focusing on what didn't happen or isn't going to happen the way we thought it would, we want to open up, leave space, and see what might be coming in as a result of what didn't come to pass. And if we get hung up on the mistake or the thing that didn't work out, then we don't see the new avenue. The other thing that's important is to look at, and I'm emphasizing this on Monday because the moon is in Virgo, and through the evening, it's in a bit of challenge. Some of us may encounter short tempers, anger, someone wanting to move faster than maybe is wise. As we get into through mid-afternoon, and the times they give are Eastern time, so you'll want to adjust depending on where you are. And that's why it's so essential to see where we are in space and really pay attention to, do I have any leverage here with this appointment? Am I sure I know where I'm going? Am I sure the person I'm meeting knows where they're going? Are we on the same page? So all this stuff is super, super important to make sure that we've got written down or agreed upon in ways that everybody's looking at what they mean to do. The moon goes void, of course, at 8:57 p.m., and it's void until early the next day, the 29th, when it enters Libra at 1:43 a.m. So during that void time, especially with the Virgo moon, it's really great to go over things, edit, make sure you've got things happening that want to stay in motion, make sure everything's moving in the right direction, double check. All throughout, in general, when Mercury's retrograde, it's great to double check, edit, go over. Do not assume anything that has to do with appointments, connection. This is not the time to schedule really tight plane changeovers or appointments, because invariably it gets really difficult to make it all happen in the way you'd like. So the moon in Libra on Tuesday, the 29th, is overall, the moon in Libra is a good time to work on cultural pursuits, anything that has to do with diplomacy, litigation, sense of fairness, equity, pros and cons, working on creating situations that go more smoothly. Once again, because of Mercury retrograde, this is a really good time to be going over anything contractual, making sure that you understand the overall thrust of an agreement. In general, when Mercury's retrograde, astrologers will recommend you don't sign things. Things get signed all the time, leases, contractual agreements, bill of sales, just because things happen when they happen. Ideally, we work on avoiding certain things. And the important thing to remember is that when there's a contractual signing, it's basically the birth of the agreement. Something has begun with that energy. It's not always negative with Mercury retrograde, especially if it's anything that has to do with needing to go deep, research. It's not great obviously, if you were launching a communications business or anything electronic, it's not great for that, because with those kind of industries, we want the fast movement to be able to happen in ways that are communication of ideas that makes sense. But it's not always a negative. Obviously, children get born, people get married, stuff begins when Mercury's retrograde that can last for a lifetime. It's also good to be aware of your own personal horoscope. Some people are born with Mercury retrograde, or it's gone retrograde through a timing method we call progressions. And then there's a logic to why things are happening at certain times when they do. But in general, Tuesday the 29th, the things to look for are, some of us may wake up a little feeling cranky or on the wrong side of bed. And this is because the dream world, I'm talking Eastern time again, depending on when you usually get up, has been pushing in ideas, creative ideas, new commitments, responsibilities, things that we need us to step up for the blossoming of something that may come forth. And depending on how aligned you were to making that happen, that's how some of us can wake up feeling a sense of, how can I get this off the ground? Other people are going to feel very jazzed and motivated, as though they're tapping into power sources. This may be especially true for air and fire sign people. And the thing that's important over the course of this day is to winnow down the options, because the piece about this day that I see challenging is that if everything just seems like, okay, I've got this big project or this thing I want to get off the ground or something I want to say, express, make happen, it can seem very overwhelming. So even if we were like working on this, especially the day before when that moon was in Virgo, and kind of segmenting or figuring out action plans, things like that, if that hasn't been formulated, or we were getting lost in the weeds with it on Tuesday, it's just important to stick to how you are going to obtain what the actual goal is and not get derailed. And some of the derailing that can happen on a day like Tuesday is like a lot of people or opportunities sort of pulling at your attention and feeling as though you have to answer everything at once. Prioritizing is the superpower on a day like today. On Wednesday, the moon is void of course basically all day, because what happens is the moon goes void of course 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday the 29th, and then it is void in the sign of Libra until it hits the sign of Scorpio on Thursday the 31st. Now, a void of course day is one where we want to work on projects already in motion. That's the ideal. The other ideal is just give yourself a psychic day off. That doesn't mean that you can't be out in the world, talking to people, having experiences. I think one of the things that would be lovely on a day like today is to be allowing your sense of absorption. So for people who can take the day and go to a park or be in nature or enjoy an art museum or a music experience or lose yourself in a book that is taking you on a journey or into something lyrical, poetic, or even philosophical. These are things that are absolutely food for the soul, on a day like Wednesday the 30th, the thing that is challenging to do on a day like today is to try to get people to agree on something, shake hands, and begin something. Because even though we're in the waxing moon cycle, which means we're in a lovely arc for building and making things happening, Mercury is retrograde, the moon is void, of course, and Chiron has gone retrograde as of 10:42 a.m. Chiron, for those of you who don't know that, about the symbolism of Chiron, is at this point in time, astronomers are calling it a centaur, which means it's a combination of an asteroid and a comet. And its orbit is a bit erratic, and it's between Saturn and Uranus. And so to astrologers, one of the things that Chiron symbolizes is the journey from the world of, quote, reality, Maya, the illusions we create where we think this is the real world, this is time, this is obligation, this is how I think I'm perceived and what I think I must do. And not that those things aren't important to concretize and work within those frames, but they are limitations and structures that we impose on our lives in order to set goals, live in community, have jobs, do things that are productive. In the same way, we create our fears and things that limit us and stop us from seeing the infinite and possibilities that are beyond the three-dimensional plane. So Uranus is the planet that symbolizes freedom, strokes of genius, change, electric currents, tapping into potentials of expansion and freedom from the perceptions of limitation. Chiron is symbolic of the wounded healer. And people who have very strong Chiron signatures in their horoscope often are artists, healers, people who through adversity have the potential to move into ways of communicating, sharing, and helping the evolution of other people's ways of seeing. And so when Chiron goes retrograde, we are being invited in to what for some of us are going to be journeys into places that are memories or challenges to break into or break through more of the understanding of the wounds that allow us the ability to heal. Now, the thing about these wounds is that there are some challenges and wounds that the perception is, oh, that is a limitation or a condition that someone has to live with that is in some ways disabled or certainly limiting or makes them in some way different. But the switch or the way of seeing the situation for the person, for the native, for the person who is in this experience, is how to come to terms with it in ways that one is able to grasp the wisdom, knowledge, understanding, spirit of their higher self and not be bound by whatever this wound is. But in order to do that, we have to really go into it, move through it, and that allows us the other side of the experience. So the retrograde period of Chiron tends to invite us in to this deeper way of understanding what our preconceived wounds, limitations, challenges are. And so having the day be void of course all day is intriguing because it basically can allow us this, I almost see it as a staff from really having the perhaps deep emotional hit that sometimes can happen when we can feel confronted or overwhelmed by whatever the wound, memory, challenge, experience is. On the other hand, it can lift us to this point of communication, shared experience. Remember, the moon is in the sign of Libra. So we may find that we are partnering or feeling a deepening of understanding, revelation with either someone else or our relationship within ourselves. So I consider this actually overall a highly productive day, as long as we're not overextended or trying to run to deadlines or, pull rabbits out of hats or make overtures or contractual agreements with people, because otherwise we may find we're missing the mark. Thursday, the 31st, the moon has entered Scorpio as of 1:25 p.m., so the morning certainly still holds what I spoke about earlier. And once it enters Scorpio, this can be the time when we are really meeting whatever it is some of us may have been engaging with or discovering the day before. I consider this a really rich overall period of time for especially artists, healers, innovators, people who are willing to kind of really meet whatever it is that they want to conquer and feel as though they're moving not necessarily from, but with a new understanding of whatever the inherent challenge, wound situation is that has them have that wisdom, understanding, ability to move with challenges. And that's, as you probably are well aware, that is super, super important in the world in which we find ourselves now, because keeping one's head in the sand or self-medicating, doing everything possible to avoid situations that feel overly stressful, that's not the antidote for moving with where we're finding ourselves. And if you or someone you're dealing with can't move with what we're experiencing now, this is also a reason to look for community to help you or the other people move with it. So even, listening to me, finding community online, finding community in your neighborhoods, having conversations with people who you do feel those connections with. These are all ways to empower instead of cower from the situations in which we find ourselves at this point in time, because we are on the threshold of profound transformation. We are in irrevocable change. The huge question mark is, what is that going to look like? And so that's why it's important to empower and move with instead of avoid or pretend it's not happening. And it's also really valuable, as I said, Chiron Retrograde, to deal with old wounds, challenges, limitations, fears, and allow yourself that sense of, what do I need to buttress, feel strong, supported, and able to meet the worlds in which I find myself and the goals that I have for myself. So I think Thursday, especially by mid-afternoon, really powerful day for just moving through a lot of this, taking on certain challenges, especially in the early evenings. Some of us may be meeting some power struggles, maybe even within ourselves, or what we're feeling is not going to allow us the ability to break through some of what we're moving from and where we want to go. But meet it, see what it is, define it, understand how you're reacting to it so that you can construct and craft a good response and an action plan on how you're going to keep moving forward, even if it's smaller steps than you originally wanted to take. Communication, you can cut through a lot of misconceptions in the evening. And this carries through into August 1st. This is when we can feel as though we kind of turned things in a new direction or got a better understanding of what we must modify in order to keep shooting towards that goal. The thing about Mercury retrograde is we may be experiencing delays or adjustments. That is not bad. What is important is to understand what is happening, why it's happening, and what you might be able to do to adjust, change, make it move in a new direction. This day overall on August 1st, really super juicy to work hard on whatever existing project you've got in motion with that Scorpio moon pulling on the Mars in Virgo. We can be so directed towards therapeutic and really profound change and transformation. So you can feel very, very positive and high energy at this point in time, as long as we're not afraid to look at what might be in the underbelly or wanting to what the shadows or fears are. It's important to kind of burn them off, see who they are, or know that you're doing it in spite of it, and with as much allies and support as you can find. The moon goes void, of course, at 9:07 p.m. on Saturday the 2nd. So, as I said, Friday, Saturday, tremendously high productivity days. Once that moon is void, of course, I think it's just a really good time to wind down, do things that are therapeutic, gentle to the body, restorative, good night's sleep. The moon enters Sagittarius at 2 a.m. on Sunday the 3rd. And this is overall, I would say, a really kind of positive, high energy day. I think the most important thing about today is you want to be in nature. You want to give yourself as wide a path as possible, as big a horizon. And even if you're an armchair explorer with a nice book or whatever you're exploring online, allow yourself possibilities, bring them in. And also, as you're putting together lists or goals or action plan steps, leave yourself some leeway for when you might get, possibly thwarted or pulled back. It doesn't mean you can't proceed. It just means that you're putting things in place to allow yourself some wiggle room if you get derailed in some way, because it's not going to last unless you let yourself get thrown. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends. And if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.